So let's talk about my boy Twice. So on the off chance, if you're an anime only or a manga reader that is not caught up, then I really do recommend you to stop the video right here, because I'm going to be talking about some pretty major spoilers for the recent events of the manga, and if you have not, caught up, or you're an anime only and you want to stay an anime only, stop this video here, because I really do think that you would want to experience what I'm going to talk about for yourself for the first time, instead of someone just saying it and spoiling it for you and ruining some of the things that happen. So, with the disclaimers out of the way / warning, let's get into it. So, I've been wanting to talk about the events in the My Hero Academia manga for the past few weeks, ever since what happened and all that, and I was going to do an entire thoughts video of the current events, but then the more and more I sat down to do it, I kept gravitating towards talking about Twice. So I was like, okay, I want to get it off my chest. I want to talk about Twice and dedicate a video to Twice, because he is such an amazing character that really needs to just be analyzed and discussed because of just his beginning and his conclusion to the story. So I guess the best place to start is Twice's origin, where he first began, at least when he was introduced to the series of My Hero Academia. When we first laid eyes upon Twice, we probably all thought he was a discount Deadpool, straight out of Marvel. But as we continue to interact with his character, as we continue to see how he is, he was definitely someone fascinating. He had a very unique personality. He was someone that was constantly bickering / arguing with himself. He never could decide on something. He would say something's too hot or something's too cold. He would always argue, and it led to many really enjoying his character. He brought a lot of comedic value to the League of Villains, and I think many appreciated Horikoshi's writing for that when it came to Twice. But then, as we continued to learn about Twice, we eventually found out the true horror, the tragedy behind his character, and how Twice technically already had a death. At the very least, he had a mental death. He died way before we ever met him. He died mentally thanks to what his quirk did to him, and to kind of go over it, we all know the story. He was someone that misused his quirk. He felt like he was the king of the world. He can use it, create doubles of himself, have his own gang because of his quirk. And eventually his quirk kind of turned against him. It caused him great harm, and his, own doubles turned against him. They went at each other's throats to prove who was the real one. And at the end of all of that, the last one standing, the Twice that was left alive, didn't even know if he was the real one or not, or some form of fake. And even at the end of the day, when you really think about everything that's happened within the story, it's not truly known if it is the real one or not, because there's a lot of theories you can kind of throw out there to his character and how his quirk works, to how he could still not be the original one, and I'm going to discuss that in a second. But the point is we know that before we met him, before he was a part of the League of Villains, Jin technically already had a death. Twice had a first mental death. And we know for a fact that he was emotionally scarred, he carried it with him, and he couldn't use his quirk properly. Eventually, interacting with the League of Villains that he considered family / friends, he led Overhaul to their hideout, and Overhaul killed Magne. Now, thanks to that, we know Twice held that against himself till the very end. Even to the final moments before he died, at least his clone died in the latest chapters, he held that against himself. He blamed himself, and he didn't want more of his family to potentially die. So we know for a fact that whole moment is what really set in motion a lot of things with his character to change, but also to even risk his own life to save the ones that he loves. It's very shonen. It's very good guyish, like a hero, when you think about it. And I'll get into that in a second. You have it to where Twice, we know he took full-on responsibility to avenge his fallen family member, which was Magne, and he did not want to allow that to happen again, to trust someone and let them break his trust and just betray the League of Villains. And we know he took steps to change because of all those things that happened, and eventually it led him down a route to where he was able to use his quirk to protect those that he loved, his family. And we know how his quirk works. Every duplicate he makes of himself, it gets fundamentally weaker. For instance, even wind itself could potentially break apart Twice's doubles. And this leads to a very fascinating question. is Twice the one we actually have interacted with since the very beginning, the original Twice? Now, I know many are going to say, obviously, it's probably him, and yes, it most likely is him. But there is always a chance that maybe the original Twice, the one that Twice created, like for instance, the original created a duplicate, and the duplicate was so good that it was pretty much a carbon copy of Twice, and in that duplicate, when it tried to use its quirk, the quirk was fundamentally weaker. What if the duplicates, it's not just necessarily they get weaker, but their quirk necessarily just isn't as durable anymore, and it creates kind of worse copies of themselves? And you could kind of view that maybe as what's going on here. Maybe the original duplicate that was of Twice was just so well made that it couldn't really fall apart that easily. That's something you could come to. But the point, though, is that Twice, we know for a fact that his quirk does fundamentally get weaker the more he duplicates himself, but eventually he overcame this barrier, and a mental barrier, and he wanted to save his family, and he started to use his quirk left and right to protect them. And we know what he did it for, why he did it for, not just to protect them, but also to save, Toga, because she was potentially going to die, and he saved the entire league against, Redestro, kind of what their whole operation was about. It was thanks to Twice why they really kind of came out on top in that entire event. So Twice really did save the league at the end of the day when you really take a moment to look at it. But there's much more to it than that. When you look at everything that the theme of Twice's character is, he's always doing things double. He's always doing things twice. Let's take a moment to look at this. He technically has died twice. I already mentioned his first death, his mental death. And what happened in the latest chapters was technically his physical death. He died a second time, and this time it was an official death. Like, he legitimately died. But that's not the only time that something double has happened in his life, besides just his quirk. You have it to where it's also him being betrayed, bringing someone to the league and they potentially harming his friends and family, and he took responsibility for it. He held it against himself, and, you could see the double right there as well, and also him trying to make sure that no one dies, but technically someone did die. Instead of, let's say, a family member died like Magne, he died instead. So it was a repeat. It was a double. And that's what's fascinating about this, is that Twice's entire character, his description, Twice/double, it's always happening 2 times in a row. Always something like that's happening. And, like to the whole trusting someone and becoming after your family, to dying 2 times, to what his quirk represents. And then he's also on both sides. He's a good guy and a bad guy. He's not fully bad, he's not fully good either. We know for a fact that Twice is kind of directly down the middle. He's a damaged man, and, Hawks himself even saw this. He didn't really want to harm, Twice, but he had to, and we know for a fact that deep down, Twice is a really good man. He's just distorted. He's twisted and broken to such an extent that he will never fully recover. Even if he wasn't dead right now, he would never fully recover because he's too far gone. There's just no coming back. It's kind of like Toga. You can't save Toga because she's just too far gone. She's been so warped by society, there's no saving her. The same as with Shigaraki. It's sad, but it's the truth. Some characters just cannot come back from their dark deeds, no matter how, they seem like they could be redeemable or not, and that's kind of where Jin is at. He's just in a middle ground. He was kind of like the good of the League of Villains. He was the one that was good but also bad, and he was someone that was kind of like a moral compass, honestly, and with him gone, I can definitely see the League losing some of its main image of what it once was, but also making the bonds of some of the League members get a lot stronger because they lost someone just so close to them that loved them so dearly. I know it's definitely going to have a radical effect on Toga and her development because of just Jin's death in general, which I might have to make a video discussing that all on its own. But the point, though, is that Jin's death does hold a lot of meaning. It's symbolic, the way he died, the way he held Toga, he gave her a hug, he disappeared like he did. He died in a way that he technically didn't want to die. He died taking damage, a clone died that had to reveal the message to the others, and, we don't really even know what truly happened to the original body of Jin. We don't know if he actually is fully dead or not. I mean, it's hypothetically he could still be alive, but I highly doubt with the emotions and just how much, feeling Horikoshi put into those moments with Twice and how he could, be dead or how he is dead. I just doubt he would kind of squander that and bring his character back and all that. I think it would be a disservice to the character to bring him back after such an emotional moment that's happened recently. I just think it'd be awful, because it could lead to so many of the League of Villain characters gaining so much character development because of the loss of one of their comrades. And it's sad, too, when you think about it, is that, you know, Twice is actually the second death of the League. It's also very fitting, too. It's not just, like, you know, him being, like, good and bad, or, you know, the second death, but, like, second death in terms of he died mentally and now physically, but he's actually the second death of the League of Villains. So it's just, like, interesting to think about that Twice is literally, he's followed his name to the very end, what he really does represent, and it's crazy. And I don't think Horikoshi is necessarily really trying to hide it. I don't think he's ever really tried to hide that fact, especially with these latest chapters. He's very on the nose with it. But I do think it's fascinating to see, though, just how he probably fought very long and hard about how to handle the character. And I do think that he did such a great way, like, he did a great thing to end Twice's character like he did. But, getting back into it, though, I do think that, at the end of the day, there is only one way that Twice could technically be alive, if anyone is holding out hope for him to be alive, and that is the fact that we know that Nomus do use the bodies of the deceased. We already know this. It has been something that has been stated already and shown within the series. So, hypothetically, even if Twice is technically dead, there is a possibility, thanks to Shigaraki gaining this immense power, even All for One, if he gets out, we know he'll get out one day, is that it's likely that maybe Twice's body could be used for a Nomu, a catalyst for a Nomu, and Twice's personality technically could live and be back in some form of Frankenstein monster. It wouldn't necessarily be him anymore, the same person, but in some elements, Twice could still be around. So there is a possibility for Twice to not be fully out of the series, but at the same time, you know, do we really want that? Do we really want Twice to come back? Personally, I think his conclusion to his character is fitting. I don't really want him to come back, because, like, I think his message there was the innocence of the League of Villains. The last bastion of innocence within the League died with him. Like, I mean, there was barely any to begin with, but just with Twice's death, it's kind of like the last good there it's just been snuffed out, and there's nothing really left. And I think that's just a good way to kind of gear us up for the villains really ramping up and truly being evil, truly being the villains that they're supposed to be. So yeah, it's just, I really think that the latest chapters have been super freaking emotional, and I mean, there's so many other things that's going on too with the whole Mirako stuff, Endeavor stuff, and all of that, and I will say this right now, it's not just gonna be the League of Villains taking L's, for instance, like dying, or some characters dying. I definitely sense a major hero character dying. Like, I'm not talking about, like, you know, like someone, like a throwaway character. I'm talking about, like, a true serious character that has been around for a while. And I know I've discussed that Mirako could potentially die, but I don't think it's going to be Mirako. I really think if there's going to be anyone that's going to die in this engagement that's about to happen, it's going to be Aizawa, Mike, or Endeavor. It's one of those three, or one of the students of UA. It's going to be one of those that are going to die to what's going to happen when Shigaraki finally does wake up. I do sense something like that. It would make the most sense, because it would not be technically fair to have just a villain death. There definitely needs to be a hero death. And there's another thing to really look at this too, and take a take from it, is that Horikoshi isn't scared to kill off characters, because Jin is technically a very big fan favorite character. People love Twice. They love his character. And for Horikoshi to do such a savage death like he did, you know for a fact he could easily do it to the hero side as well. And I do think a lot of our characters have been fiddling around with a lot of flags. A lot of death flags have been wrapping around them. And I definitely see, like I said, Aizawa, Mike, or even Endeavor, or one of the students dying. And honestly, if there's going to be any student that's going to die, it's going to be Kaminari. Kaminari is one of the only students I could say that would potentially die in this entire operation, but besides him, I'm going to say it's Aizawa, Mike, or Endeavor. But personally, I think Endeavor dying like that, I think it would be kind of like a waste. I think the best character to probably die would be either Aizawa or Mike, but Aizawa would make the most sense, because technically, if we go back to the beginning of the story, when Aizawa first encountered Shigaraki, Shigaraki almost killed Aizawa, and Aizawa stopped him, so it's likely that there could be a rematch to that, and Aizawa actually can't stop Shigaraki, and Shigaraki does win. I sense that. I definitely can sense that potentially happening. But overall, though, getting back into my thoughts of Twice, it's it's a good conclusion to his character. It's sad, honestly. I got really sad. Like, I just sat there and I was like, man, that sucks. Like, you hate to see the man die, but Hawks had to do what he had to do as well, because if Twice got away, it would have spelled the end for all of the heroes there, because Twice's quirk is just too strong. It's way too strong. It's too broken, and that it needed to be handled, and Hawks understood he had to carry that weight, so yeah, but I'm going to leave it at that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.